The Exodus from Egypt is the central event of the Torah. One of our main holidays, Passover, is dedicated to this event. The Jewish law says that we must remember the Exodus from Egypt every day of our lives. Imagine yourself being a Jew born in Egyptian slavery, and imagine you had to experience all the hardships of our people there, and then you were a part of the Exodus. After all this, you had to leave a chronicle for future generations of what you witnessed. How would you write it? Unfortunately, after the Exodus, our people had to endure many tragedies like Egyptian slavery, Crusades, Inquisition, pogroms, the Holocaust, October 7th. And you know what? There's a big difference between how we usually describe such events in modern times compared to how Judaism traditionally describes what was witnessed by the generation of the Exodus. When Jews were in Egypt, their taskmasters were exhausting them with backbreaking labor and beating them sometimes to death. They forced them to do useless work just to torture them. They took their children away and walled them up in cement. And when Pharaoh issued his new decree, they drowned every newborn boy in a river. And I think that if the history of the Jews in Egypt would be written today, the entire story would revolve around these horrors. And at the Passover Seder, we would talk about nothing but the hardships of slavery. And the largest part of the 5 books of Moses would be telling us about the atrocities that Egyptians have committed. The Torah would probably then command us to remember every day of our lives not the Exodus from Egypt, but the horrors of the Egyptian life. But even though we read about all these terrible things in the Torah, and even though at the Passover Seder we eat bitter herbs in memory of the hard life and dip vegetables in salt water that symbolizes the tears of our nation, we eat Haroset, which resembles the mud with which we worked. What is Judaism focusing on? What does the Torah emphasize? What is the holiday of Passover dedicated to? Yes, many Jews died, but we celebrate the survival of those who made it out. Yes, slavery was unbearable, but we celebrate the exodus from this slavery. This goes against what modern culture likes to emphasize. We like to focus on tragedies. We think of ourselves as victims. In the Western world, every group of people tries to point out how oppressed they are. My grandfather, like almost all Soviet men of his generation, fought in the war. But he told me only one story from his entire time on the front lines. He told me how, having returned from a battle, he saw a bullet stuck in his belt buckle. He was saved by a miracle. If this buckle had been a millimeter higher or lower, he would not be here to tell a story. And how many more such stories can be told? How many times I heard about unprecedented accidents, as people sometimes call them, that saved Jews during the Holocaust. How many times I heard stories about the miracles that saved people on October 7th. How many Israeli soldiers emerged unscathed from situations that should have killed them. We hear it all the time. Yes, we have a lot of pain and suffering. Yes, we often have to endure unprecedented tragedies. But we are here telling all these stories. We survived and we are thriving. Let's leave the stories of how it happened for future generations. Let's tell ourselves, our children, and future generations these stories of miracles of our survival.